Becky, I'm an alcoholic. I'm here to ruin Susie Spears' reputation.
Good luck with that.
I always like to read this before I speak, and then I'll get going. So this is from the Daily Reflections, May 2nd, Lighting the Dark Past. Cling to the thought that in God's hands the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it you can avert death and misery for them. That's from the Big Book, page 124. No longer is my past an autobiography. It is a reference book to be taken down, opened, and shared. Today, as I report for duty, the most wonderful picture comes through. For though this day may be dark, as some days must be, the stars will shine even brighter later. My witness that they do shine will be called for in the very near future. All my past will this day be a part of me, because it is the key, not the lock. My sobriety date is March 19th, 2014. I just got 7 years. I always try to add it up whenever people say their sobriety date, so I thought I'd just go ahead and say it. My home group is Gratitude in Raleigh. We meet Mondays and Thursdays. We're actually meeting right now. I had to text them and let them know I'm not going to make it. It is surreal being here with actual people. There's a lot of y'all, and I am intimidated, so. But I'm the type of person who, like, I was thinking about this today. Of course, I'm thinking about I'm going to come and be here, and I just want y'all to like me. But it's not even just that. Like, I want this talk to be so good that you're like, we're good. We don't need any more speakers ever. Becky just dropped the mic. Of course, that's not realistic, so I'll just do my best. So anyway, yes, I am from Raleigh. I have two older sisters that were twins. They are still twins. And that I thought was my problem growing up is because when I was about 5, I moved to a small town, and that was novel, the twin situation. And so I just knew that if I had a twin, everything would be all right. And of course, when I get to AA, my first real sponsee was a twin, and I just had to deal with that resentment right there out the gate. But yeah, my growing up situation was rough. That's not why I'm an alcoholic, but it was interesting. I come from a broken home, and which is fine. It would freak me out if my parents were together. They've been separated since I was conceived, so which is fine. But there was abuse, and there was living in foster homes and moving around. And growing up, I always felt like I was just missing out on something. Of course, there was the twin thing, but there's also, I don't know, I didn't really feel. Looking back, I had friends, like I did, and I went to elementary school all the way up to 8th grade with perfect attendance in a small town, and I was in the same class with the same people, and it was good. But whenever I was there, I really felt like the butt of the joke. I really felt like no one really liked me, and everyone's just putting up with me. I was always on the outside, even though they would have told you, we were buds or whatever. And then I moved to Raleigh in 8th grade, and that was horrible because I had grown up in the same environment over and over every year, the same classmates, and then suddenly there were strangers and a lot of people, and there was chaos at home, and it was just scary. So whenever I turned 16, I was going to a really nice school. I was going to a really nice high school in Raleigh, and I had met this girl in English class, and she seemed like me, like we just got along pretty well. And so her mom came and picked us up, and she picked us up in this ratty old car. It was a Galant, and the paint was peeling. I was like, yes, we can be friends. And then we pull up to this house, and it's 3 stories in Holly Springs, and I was like, you lied, but we became fast friends, and really that friendship, I drank first whenever I was with her, and they're from Europe, she lived in Europe, and her parents were the kind of people that are like, oh, well, a little beer, whatever, and so, of course, I took advantage of that. The first time I drank and got drunk, I blacked out, and I almost died. I laid on my back, and I've known people to have the aspiration where you choke on your own vomit and die. So that almost happened to me the first time that I drank. But to me, that experience was, my friend was cool and pretty and fun and funny, and I was this like troll that she just dragged along. And so I remember that night just feeling like, wow, this is what it feels like to be cool. You know, this is what I've been looking for, that feeling of like, I'm a whole person finally. I fit in. I remember they laughed at I was the funny one. And I just felt like I was on top of the world that night. And who cares if I had to take a shower with all my clothes on or like whatever. It just didn't matter because I only remembered all of the good stuff, that feeling of like euphoria and fitting in, and it just felt right, you know, suddenly everything clicked into place. And so I stayed over at her house as much as possible. The house that I was staying in at the time, the foster home I was in, they were very religious, and so she would say, I was named after her actually, Becky, but she would say, well, don't go over there drinking, you know. Don't. You can go over, but don't be drinking. And I'd say, yeah. And then I'd drunk call her, you know. It was, but I had fun. Her mom one time, my friend's mom said, I don't care if you drink at the house, but if you're going to barf, do it in the toilet. And, I just was like, I was out of control from the very beginning. Like, I drank alcoholically from the start. I know I've heard other people say, oh yeah, it was fun at some point. For me, it was always just extreme. I blacked out. I tried to black out every time I drank, and I usually was successful with that. And so I was 16, and I was drinking as much as I could. And I remember the worst thing. Oh, it's so dumb. But we wanted to drink tequila, and so it tastes really bad. And we just got like all the ice cream, and we got like a pitcher, like this old ancient Mexican pitcher, and filled it with tequila, and then like all the ice cream, and we would just take a swig and then like eat the ice cream, like with tears streaming down our face, like just do it. Just to get, it was like I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to get what I needed. Or like a can of Diet Coke, and you would put vodka. It's just like, just terrible drinking ideas, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I just wanted to get drunk. I just needed to get where I needed to go. And so when we were over there, people would come over and we would just party, and it was just a party. And I had no consequences because it was fine with everyone. So then I moved again and lost that privilege of drinking over there. I was smoking that. I started smoking when I was 16 too, smoking cigarettes. And I remember when my dad found my secret stash of ashes in my room, and he's like, he smoked inside, so it's like, oh, you're growing up, I was like, yeah, I'm growing up, but I still had to depend on, like, even with cigarettes, before he knew about it, then I would like raid his cigarette ashtray for all the ones that were long enough for me to smoke. Because it's like, I can't buy them myself. And my sister was like, I'm not buying them for you. And so anyway, I like what I like. And I'll do what I need to do to get it. So then when I turned 18, I started dating a person. And she was older. She was over 21. And so she would buy me whatever I wanted. And I didn't find out till later that she right before we started dating, she had quit pills and drinking and all that, like a week before we met. And so she had a lot of trouble with my drinking, but she just still kept buying it for me. And she'd say, well, I just wish that you wouldn't drink every night. And I'd say, well, stop buying. I can't buy it. You're my only source of wine. But living there, I did drink almost as much as I wanted to. And, I was out on my own. I didn't have any adults. There were no adults anywhere. But I would get, like, my favorite thing to do was, like, to get a cookout cup and put a whole bottle of wine in there and just walk around the neighborhood sipping wine out of my cookout cup. And I drank as much as possible. After that, I moved we broke up, and I moved into another apartment with some roommates. And one of the girls said one day, because I started drinking beer, because wine, I don't know, I just got messy or whatever. Like I had all these reasons why I couldn't drink wine. So I started drinking beer, and I was drinking 2 nights in a row. And she was like, "Are you drinking again tonight?" And I was like, "Yes." Like, don't you dare say anything to me about my drinking. There was a beer, like a communal beer fridge. It was like one of those little ones. And it just became my beer fridge. I just always had it full, and I was always just drinking in the common area. I couldn't wait to get out of there. Because what a buzzkill to have somebody judging my drinking. I just couldn't stand it. So I found someone who drank like I drank, and the immediate bond created by that is all I needed for a relationship to continue. So I met this guy and moved in with him like the first day I met him, and we just drank to the furthest extent. Like I think I was over 21 finally now, and so I could buy my own alcohol, and I blacked out every single day. On beer, which is interesting. Whenever I got to AA, I had a really hard time identifying because I was in detox, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "What's your drug of choice? Meth? Crack? Heroin?" And I was like, "I just drink beer. It's not even that much." Like I immediately thought I have overestimated my problem at detox. But so anyway, I would black out in like 4 beers a night, and then I would keep drinking after that. But I couldn't account for what I was doing. One of my favorite things to say these days is that I could have killed someone. I just don't know if I did. Like I was a violent drunk. I would hit him. I mean, he would hit back. We were violent together, and I did drive drunk pretty much every single day. I'm shocked that I never got caught. I did get pulled one time for speeding, and I was still drunk from the night before, and he let me go, and I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, watch your speed." But I didn't really have that many external consequences. I did feel at that time, I don't know, I felt so totally empty and devoid of anything worthwhile. I mean, I had this violent and abusive relationship. I was abusive, I was abused, and then I was just blacking out every day, and I worked so that I could drink, and I mean, it was just going nowhere. And I was talking to Rose the other day about how I could not get it together to do anything. Like, I wanted to go to the museum downtown for like 6 months, and it was like a mile from where I lived. And I rode my bike because I didn't want to get a DUI or whatever. So I actually had a car, but I didn't want to learn how to drive it. It was stick shift. So I just rode my bike for like a year and a half. And I was like, man, I would get off work and go, I'm going to go to the museum today. Like, today's the day. I'm feeling good. And then I just couldn't do it. Like, I would get drunk and it would just be over. I just couldn't make it to the museum. I remember when I finally did, I called my mom. And I was like, "Mom, I'm at the museum." Like, I was so happy about it. Because it took me so much effort to do anything. And it felt like everything did take a lot of effort. I mean, getting my car registered, or I don't know, just anything. Going to the grocery store. It was like anything besides just sitting and drinking at my house. On my stoop. I was a stoop drinker. I was always on the stoop. And people would just show up. And I'd be like, "Yeah, let's drink." You know, I was just a stoop person. And so anything besides that was miserable and uncomfortable for me. And I was always trying to get back there. One day I was working, and I had a coworker, and we kind of worked. It was just us two out in a building, and I was getting off work at like 10:30 in the morning, and I said, "Oh yeah," I was, because I only got to work at like 6, and I was like, "I'm really excited to get off work early today so I can get home and drink." And he was like, "Drink?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, are you an alcoholic? And I was like, yeah. Like, at that point, I knew I had to drink every day. Or, I would admit, like, that was my identity. I was like, I'm drinking. If you're not drinking, we're not friends. Like, that's it. That's the only litmus test for me. So he was like, oh, okay. So then the next day, all day, he did the most obnoxious thing. He told me his whole story. And I was like, why is this guy telling me this really messed up stuff? And, and he like finishes it's like over the day, and he finishes his story at the end of the day. And all I'm thinking is like, man, that guy's really messed up. I'm glad I'm not that bad. But he's trying to do this. What I'm doing is like, he's trying to get me to relate. And I just could not do it. I was not there. What's really cool though is that he ended up being at the first meeting. No. He was at one of the first time I went to what ended up being my home group. He was there and he's like, hey, you made it. And I was like, So anyway, after that, things started getting really bad, just inside, emotionally. I just would like cry and then hit someone and I don't know, just run down the street and just like crazy stuff. I like laid down in traffic one time and just whatever. Insanity, just total craziness. I was very unpredictable and I would usually start, I heard somebody say this and I thought it was a very tactful way, so I'm going to say what somebody else said before. But she said, I would always start drinking sitting up, and I would always end up on my back. And I identified with that. So that's all. That's all I'm going to say about that. But yeah, so I just felt like a piece of trash, just the worst, and just like nothing. I hated a cheater. I was a cheater, but if I would get rolling, I would get drinking and go on tangents. I went on a tangent about what's his name, Mr. Rogers. Anyway, I would go on tangents about people that cheat, knowing that I just did that like yesterday. Just awful. And I could not live with myself. I couldn't stand to be not drunk, just to be in my mind and sober was miserable. I couldn't wait to get out of that state of being, which was sobriety. Then I started, things started going bad for me. For instance, I got a car and it was bad. And so that was my problem. And suddenly I saw that I needed to go to therapy because my car was bad. And so I went, and the first like, what are you here for, whatever. I just started weeping, and I'm like, I don't know. And she was like, do you drink? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm an alcoholic. And then she's like, do you do drugs? And I was like, oh yeah, whatever. And she's like, oh, okay. And then, so I just talk about all my problems the whole time. And then at the end, then she says, you said you're an alcoholic. And I was like, and she's like, you need to go to like a substance abuse counselor. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, it's really bad. The car thing is really bothering me. Whatever you want me to do. And so I did. I went to a substance abuse counselor, and every week that we would meet, and he would say, so have you drank any less this week? Let's try drinking less this week. And I would be like, oh, okay, yeah, that might, I don't know, maybe that'll do something. It was so difficult for me. I just could not synthesize the fact that I was feeling bad and drinking and feeling bad, and like they had anything to do with each other. And he would try to get me to realize that, and I would just be like, why does he keep bringing up my drinking? I want to talk about this car thing. And it just went like that for like 6 months probably. And one time, after the session or whatever, then he printed out AA meetings for me. He like printed out all the Raleigh meetings and was like, here you go. And I was like, trash, just why would you give me a piece of paper? Okay, I'll write notes on it later. Didn't do anything with it. But whenever I did finally, so it got so bad that I could not deny that the things that were happening had something to do with drinking. And I was so afraid for my actual life that I was like, well, I guess I need to not drink every day, but I don't know what that's going to look like. And I had shakes every day. I had really obvious physical withdrawal from alcohol every day. And so I was afraid to not drink because I thought I would probably go into DTs. And so I went into detox. And the night before detox, I was at my mom's, my mom now is sober, almost a year and a half or so now. But anyway, I used to drink with my mom a lot, and I was at my mom's because she lived near the place that I was going, which is Holly Hill, a psych ward, everyone. And I was so afraid from what had happened. I had just faced death like 12 hours previously, and I was so afraid that I didn't want to drink. But they couldn't get me in that night, and I wasn't going to drink that night. I didn't know what was going to happen. But my mom said, my mom was like, "Well, aren't you going to drink tonight?" And I said, "No. I mean, it was just really bad." And she's like, "Oh, a lot of people do like a last hurrah thing." And I was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." Definitely doing that. So I did. And it's like the insanity of that like it was so bad. And then suddenly I can just forget in a second. Like it just goes away. I did end up getting into detox the next day, and I stayed there for about, I think 5 or 7 days. I don't know. I love detox. For one, it was like, they just give you a lot of drugs, and I was just like out of it for like a week. I hadn't had a vacation from work in a while, and so it was just nice. They'd be like, "Who wants to take meds?" And I'd be like, "Me first," you know. I was eating 3 times a day. I mean, it was just like really nice. At Holly Hill, if you are a low bottom alcoholic, go to Holly Hill because it is nice. So anyway, but what was really important about being in Holly Hill was that the meetings got brought in. So I didn't have to do anything. I was just like sitting doing a puzzle, and then people came in and brought a meeting. And so by no virtue did I get, so by no merit of my own, it was the grace of God that I was even introduced to AA, because I don't know if I would have ever gone to a meeting otherwise. But they did. They brought in meetings, and what really flipped the switch for me was a girl that I knew. And it was that guy that told me his story. His girlfriend came in to Holly Hill with a meeting with Gratitude, which is my home group. And it was a bunch of young women. And what is funny about with her in particular is that I had been day drinking with someone that I was cheating on my boyfriend with, and in the Rose Garden. And she was there, and I would like recognize her. I didn't really know her that well, and I was like, "Hey, come drink with us." And she said, "Oh no." And I was like, "What are you doing?" And she said she was drawing trees, and I was like, "That's weird, but we have a beer." And she was like, "No, thank you." So anyway, when I saw her there, then I said, "Oh, she doesn't drink. That's super cool. Like it's an actual person and not just some freak old man or something." I don't know. I don't know what I thought you guys were going to be like, but I just was like, they've got 5 heads, or I don't know. So I was like, yeah, a person, I knew her name, and like I almost drank with her that one time, so she was cool with me. And and so I decided I'd go to meetings whenever I got out. And I identified, I was like, I just thought I knew everything already when I was in detox. I was like, yeah, the A people need to take notes from me, but I'll go help them, And so anyway, I did go, and my first meeting was a young people's meeting, which with like 200 people, and I went and got a white chip. I didn't even know what that meant, and everyone clapped, and I was just mortified. So then the next meeting I went to was like it was Westminster. It was a beginner's meeting on Sunday night, and they were like, "Does anyone have a topic?" It's a newcomers meeting, which I almost didn't go because I was like, I'm not really a newcomer. I'm a week sober, y'all. But I did go to the newcomers meeting, and they said, "Did anyone have a topic?" And I said, "You know what? I got out of detox recently, and I'm really loving being sober. How do I get my boyfriend sober?" And the whole meeting, everyone just shared pointedly about, like, when I was new, I had to focus on myself, And I was like, this is so weird. I don't know if I'm going to keep coming to these, They're just talking about random stuff. Nobody answered my question. It's all about me. But after the meeting, then a bunch of women came up, and they said, "You should call me. Here's my number," which was cool. I didn't intend on calling any of them, but I was like, "Oh, that's nice." And then I ended up going to gratitude the next night, and she was speaking, the girl that came into Holly Hill. And so I was like, this is cool. So I can do this. I did keep drinking after I got to AA. So I was telling the ladies on the way here that for several years, I said, it took me 9 months to get sober in AA. And then after several years, I actually counted, and it was 7 months. And so I spent a year sharing about how I lied. It wasn't on purpose, though. But that 9 months felt like forever. And I had gotten a sponsor right at the beginning at that meeting, wherever I raised my hand and brought the topic. And she had more years sober than I was alive. I was 24. No, I was 23 when I got to AA. I was 24 when I got sober. And I really just thought, I'm not quite like y'all. Like, I had to do this counseling thing. Like, I don't hear people talking about that. And like, I don't know. Like, I'm just a little bit different. And people would say things about humility, or like, oh, I have so much pride. And I'd be like, oh, poor thing. That's so hard. Bless their heart. That must be hard. But I just had no self-awareness. And I did have that sponsor, and she really went above and beyond. And it is amazing that she's still helping people at that much time sobriety. But one time I would go buy alcohol and then call her, and it'd be like 2 a.m, and she would answer, and I would like be at the gas station and like open it and take a sip, like, well, now I got to pick up my white chips, so I might as well do it. And so anyway, one time I called her before I opened it, and she lived maybe 45 minutes from me, and she came over at 2 o'clock in the morning and threw that alcohol out in the trash with me. And then we went and sat at Waffle House and had coffee and whatever, hash browns. And that is amazing. That is so cool. And I feel so privileged to be able to show up for people like that. Even I haven't had to do that yet, but maybe I will once, one day. Who knows? But yeah, she was amazing. I kept blaming her that I couldn't get sober. I was like, she's not going to take me through the steps, but I didn't know what alcoholism was. I didn't really want to quit drinking, and so she just wouldn't give me the time of day. She was like, you need to do step 1, and I'd be like, what do I need to do, And what's interesting about step 1 for me is that it was totally inward. Like, there was nothing anyone said that made me realize it. There was nothing. It was like just a totally, like a switch flipped, and I realized the truth. And so, anyway, that whole time I was with her, that I didn't get sober, but I would try, and every time that I'd drink, I'd only drink for like a day. I think the longest I stayed out after I got to AA was maybe 5 days. And I would call her and I'd say, you know what? I don't think AA's for me. I'm good. And she'd say, okay. You can always call me though, it's fine. And then the next day I'd call and be like, it's so bad. Oh my gosh. I got arrested after I got to AA. I had a clean record, and now I am a criminal, y'all. I have a misdemeanor. It's been 7 years though, so I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I woke up in jail. The lady asked me, and the nurse asked me, where did I know where I was whenever I woke up in jail? And I was like, Holly Hill? And she's like, no, honey, you're in jail. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? But yeah, it just kept getting worse and worse. And finally, the last 2, I did this twice, the last 2 times that I drank, I ended up shooting up cocaine for 10 or more hours, which is crazy. I didn't do drugs. I'd never shot up any drugs or anything, but I was in a blackout, and I drove across town and made a decision, and then came to and had to deal with the consequences of that. And I thought for sure I was going to die, and oh my gosh, it was just horrible. I can't believe that I ever did that, but there it is. So I did that once, and then I did it again. So I it was more informed decision, I think, the second time. But the last time I drank, and I did that, I came to, and I had a needle on my arm, and I decided to keep doing it, and I thought it was going to kill me, and I wanted to die. I welcomed death at that point. And it didn't kill me. I just kept living, and But thankfully, I mean, I was in AA, so I remember I went to, after I went to jail, I woke up in jail, then I went to my home group. I was doing setup that month. And I told one of the old guys, I said, I got arrested this weekend, went to jail, you know. And he was like, well, I hope you find your bottom. You know, and I was like, now I'm like, man, that is some good boundaries. But anyway, so I kept going to meetings, though, this whole time, unless I was drinking, and then I'd go back after. And I just felt like, I don't know why I could not get this thing. And I spent a month in AA just like, I just knew I was going to die soon. Like there was nothing I could do. Like that feeling of powerlessness. Absolutely nothing I could do. The certainty that I'm going to drink again and it's going to kill me. And I just was living with that impending doom just floating over me for that month. And I was so afraid. That's the only thing that kept me from drinking. And then that girl from the Rose Garden, you know, we had been friends the whole time. And she had been suicidal in recovery, and then she had gone through the steps again and had a spiritual awakening right in front of me, and I could not deny the results. And so I said, I didn't even ask her actually. She was like, do you want to do this? You know, you're going to die. And I was like, oh yeah. So we did the steps in a day. She took me through, we went and sat out at the lake, and I just went through them all. And she said she did not intend on doing that, but that's how it worked out. And I haven't drank since then. Well, I haven't drank since a month before then, but I know I would have drank if I hadn't done that, because that's where I was headed. So, and what that really means is that, like, we talked about the first 3 steps. I did my inventory in my 5th step, and then we talked about the rest of them, and I had planned for my amends, you know. And she said I could sponsor people, and that's what I started doing. And people had opinions about that, but it kept me sober. The first person I ever started taking through the steps, I forgot that there was a 3rd step prayer. Because it was like, I had only done it like a week previously. But I stayed sober. I don't know if any of the other people did, but it certainly helped me stay sober. And whenever I finally got a year of sobriety, I was like, yeah, I've made it, you know, it's solid. I can share in meetings now. And I just thought I knew everything. And of course I had done the steps a little bit differently, and so here was still that same thing where, well, I'm a little bit different than y'all. Like, I was at my home group once, and a girl was speaking, and she had 7 years of sobriety, and she was on the 7th step for the first time. She does a step a year, and I was so offended. I was like, what is she doing here? You know? But I'm not the gatekeeper, thank God. You know, like, whoever needs to be here, whatever way you do it, as long as you stay sober, whatever works. So anyway, I got real arrogant. Real arrogant in sobriety and in AA, in the rooms of AA, and I just thought I had the only answer. And I carried on like that for several years until I was at 5 years of sobriety, and I was suicidal in sobriety, and I just felt totally alone. And what was different this time, because I was suicidal all the time when I was drinking, I always wanted to die, and what was different this time was that there was no drink. There was nothing. It was just me, and I just wanted to step out into traffic every moment, you know. I really had to fight that urge. And I just thought, you know, this is what recovery is. This is what sobriety looks like, is we're all just hanging on, you know, by a thread. And people say, I would hear people, you know, oh, this life is not a vale of tears. And I'd be like, bullshit, you know, like, it is. It's fine. You can just say that, but we all know the truth. And that was really how I thought I just had to be. I had gotten a new sponsor because that sponsor my sponsor I had for 4.5 years had left AA. And so I got a new sponsor, and I was telling her about this. At my new home group, then we did a first step meeting, and I shared about how, like, man, this is really bleak, and like we have a fatal illness, and like it's really bad. So, ooh, yeah, it was like I just had no hope. I had no hope because I felt like there was nothing good left in the world, and which is so dramatic. Whatever. That's really how I felt, and so. We went to get salad after and lunch, and I was telling her about how I just like don't want to be on the earth anymore, and she was like, "You need to get help like right now." I don't have experience with this, So I did. I ended up getting outside help, which was wonderful. But also, what I needed to realize about my program is that I had no God. There was no God. I was God. And if I couldn't do it, then it couldn't be done. And so I had spent all those years in recovery and sobriety feeling like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. And if I can't do it, then there's nothing, you know. And that includes my own sobriety. That includes, you know, I started going to school at 1.5 years of sobriety. I started going to college and talk about stress. You know, it was just like, if I don't make 100, then I'm the worst person that ever walked the face of the earth. So it was just so much pressure and stress, and I just felt like the jig is gonna give up at some point. You know, like it's not long. The wheels are gonna fall off this thing, and I don't know what's gonna happen. And what was really cool is, so then that sponsor left AA, and I really, for a minute, I was sitting there like, is this a sign? Like, I don't believe in God, but maybe God is sending me a sign that I should leave AA. I'm reading the tea leaves here. And thankfully, I just had a moment of clarity that I cannot do sobriety by myself. I cannot stay sober by myself. I know because I had tried. I had tried and failed so many times. And so I had that moment of clarity, and it just occurred to me that there's this wonderful lady I knew from my old home group. And I asked Susie for her number, and I called her up and just asked her, would she be my sponsor? And she said, yeah. And I was like, I mean, just making the decision was a big turning point. But we started going through the steps, and I hadn't gone through the steps again since that first time when I did it in a day. And so I had a lot more to learn, and I needed to find a higher power, really. I didn't know that, but that's what I needed to do, and so that's what I did, which is incredible. The difference in before, whenever I felt like I had to do everything and felt the pressure of the world on my shoulders, versus like, oh, there's a higher power, is like incredible. like it's okay. It's okay. I don't have to do it. I actually can't do it, which is a relief. And I remember this whenever I finally realized that there was God, and that, I mean, just a very powerful experience. Then I had this thing, and it's so corny. It's corny, but whatever. It's my experience. With the footprints in the sand, that whole thing, where like I really thought I was walking by myself the whole time, and I was being carried the whole time. You know, like I can't have stayed sober. I can't have done anything on my own. It was the grace of God that carried me through, and I feel so grateful that I didn't die first before I realized that, even in sobriety. And so, anyway, it's been really wonderful going back through the steps and having a relationship with a higher power. How everything is, I don't know, like, I wish that I hadn't suffered like that, but also, like, I know that it is helpful, you know. I know that I can help people that are suffering like that. Maybe I'm uniquely suited, and so I feel grateful for that, and I wouldn't be where I am today without that suffering. So, I mean, that is my experience in general in AA. Whenever I got to AA, then I was with that guy who was an alcoholic, and he drank alcoholically, and he did not get sober. And I thought for sure I could not get sober. I just couldn't, living there in that environment. And I couldn't for a while, you know, and I finally did. And I realized it has nothing to do with him. My recovery is my responsibility, and he cannot pour alcohol into my mouth. You know, like, I have that choice. It just is up to me whether I'm going to drink or not. And it has nothing to do with anybody else, really, or what my life is like. The circumstances just don't matter. I can stay sober. And so I did. I stayed with him for a year after I got sober, and I'm so glad. But it was very painful, you know, like we had that abusive relationship and just whatever, just really toxic circumstances. And I stayed sober in that. And that has been one of the most helpful things. When we get sober, a lot of people have really weird living situations, and people think they cannot get sober unless everything is okay. And I always say that is not true. That is not my experience. Things can be very chaotic and very sad and weird, and you can stay sober no matter what. You can stay sober. That's just my experience. Job or no job, wife or no wife, you know. That's what our literature says, and I know that from my own experience now. But, oh yeah, I was going to tell you all about my spiritual experience. So I did have a spiritual experience recently, which has been incredible. I was talking to Ladybug one day, and I realized that she was talking about, she felt the love of God, and that I hadn't felt that, and I desired that. And so I was walking across my yard later that night, and I was looking at the stars, and it was like, I'm a sucker for like aesthetics and like a good whatever ambiance, and so like the wind was blowing, and like it was really nice. It was January, but it was like really a mild night, and the stars were really clear, and I just felt lifted up and connected to everything, and like everything was okay, and I felt seen and loved, you know, totally in that moment. And ever since then, it's just been like, no one can take that from, you know, that is my experience of feeling the power of God, and the power of not being alone, that I'm not alone in the universe, and that I am seen and loved. And God wants a relationship with me, which is just blows my mind. The other thing I was going to say is that life is busy. It's taken me 6 years, but I am graduating next month, and I changed my mind halfway through and tacked on 3 more years of school, and that's fine. I'm getting a degree in something I love, and that I think will be fulfilling. And y'all, I'm eloping next month. That's what we decided. So my boyfriend, who I've met, you know, after the other guy went away, or my fiance, I guess now. He just proposed in January, and so we've been together for almost 6 years, and we're going to get married. And like this life is not what I thought. It's nothing I would have ever wanted whenever I was drinking. I didn't even like people like me that I am today. You know, like if I met me today when I was drinking, we wouldn't have been friends, you know, which is fine. You know, I remember whenever I first realized that I cussed less, then I was really upset, because I was like, I liked that about myself, you know. That was edgy, and now I'm just boring. But the gifts of this program, and being able to live life and connect with people and not feel that emptiness, that cold, you know, what do they say, the hole in your soul with the cold wind blowing through it, to feel like, okay, what we have to do to get that is really pennies on the dollar. You know, I have to do a few simple things, and then I get this beautiful, beautiful perspective on the world, where I can look at you guys. You know, I can walk around without feeling like I'm the worst person that's ever existed, you know, or to actually be a part of my family, or, you know, all of this stuff. My car is fine. I bought a new car this week, actually. But it's not new. It's new to me. It's 94 4Runner, so pretty cool. But yeah, like to be able to live life and to do things without, I can go to the museum anytime I want. You know, I just go. It's fine. It's like, it takes me like 10 minutes. And the privilege of doing that, and of actually being alive to enjoy all this. You know, I'm on borrowed time, and I realize that every day, and I'm incredibly grateful. So I would not have been able to do it without you guys. So thank you so much for my sobriety.